Yo guys, how are we all doing today? It's FanFic Reader here. Just want to make one disclaimer real quick. If I sound any more different than usual, it's because I have a cold. So my voice might be a little bit deeper than usual, but who knows, this actually might benefit me a little bit. Might make me sound cooler. Anyway, we are here with Avengers of Steel Chapter 7, Unexpected Guests. Are you ready? Let's carry on. Tony Stark was bored. Sadly, this wasn't anything new to him. Being as intelligent as he was, it was bound to happen with annoying frequency. His mind was simply that much faster than the average person, and because of that, his brain just solved problems a lot quicker. And when there was nothing else to solve, well, his mind just didn't really know how to deal with the idleness. It was on times like these that Tony often did the most impulsive things. He just craved something to do so badly, but by that point, he just did what he could to get things moving, which usually resulted in a lot of money spent, a horde of journalists, and sometimes property damage and bruises. But he would do his best to contain himself. He had promised Pepper that much, and after the whole mess with the Mandarin and Aldrich Killian, more than ever she deserved his best behaviour. His impulsiveness had pretty much cost him his house in Malibu, his suit collection, and came pretty close to costing his and Pepper's lives. As everything in his life, when Tony Stark fucked up, he fucked up in style. That's not to say he had been lazy since then. No, the renovations in Stark Tower, the now renamed Avengers Tower, took a lot of his time. Since it had to be upgraded to be the headquarters of the team, that meant he had to improve the whole structure not only to fit people who would live there, but also house a few Quinjets, the research and development floors, raise the security of the place, and keep and maintain the newly made Iron Legion. And of course, there was the improvements he made on the suits, always seeking to become better than the ones before. Hard work, long hours, but a lot of caution to not get obsessed all over again. Blowing up his armours had been a symbol of his new outlook on life and a declaration of his love to Pepper, all wrapped up in one. So he couldn't exactly go back anymore. Not that he wanted to go back to that horrible place he'd been a few months ago. All that, however, did not change his current predicament. With the renovations almost done, there was still little input he could give anywhere. Similarly, his armour also was up to date with his most recent ideas, and even if he never really stopped to think on how to improve them, he had reached perfection. At least for a few days. Then he would probably have a new idea. And with Jarvis and Pepper both running his company, there was little to do. Tony really missed the team when things got like that. Not that he would admit it, being the self-sufficient genius he was, but he felt lonely sometimes. His fame, money, intelligence, and of course his personality kept people away. And the ones who did try to get close were often interested in something other than friendship. At best, they were women trying to take advantage of his money, fame, and good looks. At worst, they were people trying to steal his technology and/or trying to assassinate him. And of course, from Tony's perspective, even the people who genuinely didn't mean harm were genuinely boring as hell. The Avengers weren't, though. Maybe fighting alongside them in the battle to save the world made him a little biased, but the fact that the members of the Avengers were by necessity extraordinary people, meaning they were not tedious even if not all of them could follow his quick thinking like Banner could. All of them were smart and remarkable people, and Tony was frankly surprised to call them friends. Before then, Tony could count on one hand the number of friends he really had. Even Cap was a friend, something he couldn't, even with all his intelligence and resources, foresee. And he actively did try to hate the guy, in the beginning, which honestly shouldn't be difficult, since the man was pretty much the opposite of him, except apparently, where it really matters. Well, Howard would be proud, wouldn't he? One more reason to try and hate the guy, but damn that Steve Rogers for being such a likeable person. Maybe he should throw a party, he thought. Something to commemorate the reopening of Avengers Tower. He would call the rest of the team, obviously, or at least the ones he could reach, which were all of them except Thor, who still hadn't come back since New York. Pepper, of course, since she was his girlfriend and probably would want to organise everything. Everyone would have a +1, and maybe he could give a call to some of Cap's old friends from the war. If any of them were still alive, Rhodey had to come too, and Happy. Maybe some celebrities from New York, but no one annoying, or the ones he had already slept with. Pepper wouldn't like that. That way there would only be a few to pick. He would have to make a list. When Tony was opening his mouth to call Jarvis so they could begin preparations, his phone rang. The screen showing that the caller was Natasha Romanoff herself. He couldn't remember the last time she called him, if she ever did, since she worked undercover as his secretary. So without delay, he received the call, not on his cell phone, that would be boring of him, but on the recently installed sound system of the tower. "Stark speaking," he said. After a few seconds there was no answer, just a tired sigh, then she answered. "Stark, I need your help." It was Tony's turn to become speechless, but not for long, of course. Jarvis, are you recording this? He yelled. Of course, sir. All calls made to your number are recorded for security purposes. Make a backup. No, 2 even. And place it in the high security vault. Natasha sighed again, probably reconsidering her life choices. You know, just pass the phone to Pepper. Well, you know what, give it to Jarvis. No can do. Pepper is busy and Jarvis has no secrets from me. Ignoring Tony, Jarvis actually did answer. What can I do for you, Miss Romanoff? He asked with a polite British accent. Hey! Thank you, Jarvis. I've heard you have eyes everywhere now. Is that true? Natasha asked. It wasn't untrue, Tony thought. After all, the problem they had to find Luki and, more recently, his own problems of finding the Mandarin and his people, Tony had developed and launched a lot of satellites that could work as an extension of Jarvis. While he couldn't process all the data that the satellites gathered, not even with Jarvis's help, he did have a lot more cameras now, capable of looking at everything that happened in the world. It wasn't as good as S.H.I.E.L.D.'s intelligent gathering, but it was getting there. It is close to the truth, Miss Romanoff, Jarvis answered. Do you need me to find something specific for you? Bright Arctic oil rig, she recited. It was an oil rig located near Cordova, Alaska, that exploded. S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't have anything about it other than the fact it was burned down. I would appreciate it if you could check your recordings and see if there's any footage of the event. Tony frowned, a little curious about why Natasha would be investigating something like that. He walked to the monitor where Jarvis was searching for the footage. I am searching the archives now, Miss Romanoff. Please wait a moment. Thank you, Jarvis. You are a true delight. Hey, I'm a delight too, Tony interjected, getting no answer from her. Rolling his eyes, he turned back to the screen, watching the blur of several recorded images passing accelerated, until it finally got the right one. I am transmitting to your computer now, Miss Romanoff, Jarvis said, beginning to play the recording. The image was a little bit further away than he would have liked, but it was clear enough. It showed the oil rig in the middle of the ocean, fire everywhere, a tower of black smoke in the sky. Some boats were visible on the screen too, far from the oil rig, but obviously there to make a rescue attempt. For a while nothing really happened besides a few smaller explosions and a helicopter arriving on the scene, circling around the helipad. Then he saw a bunch of people arriving from the stairs on the helipad, led by a shirtless and barefooted guy. The shirtless man waved his hand, as if telling the people following him to make haste as the helicopter approached to land. The workers ran to the helicopter, entering as fast as they could with the exception of the shirtless man. He stopped and looked up, noticing what Stark had also seen. The explosions and the fire had damaged the structure, and the big tower of the oil rig began to fall down, right in the direction of the helipad. There was no time to get away. At least that was what he thought. His jaw almost dropped to the floor when the shirtless man jumped closer and raised his arms, holding the multi-ton tower in place. He couldn't believe what he was seeing just now. That was impossible. That thing had to weigh a whole lot of tons, way more than even his own suit was capable of lifting. He didn't even think Thor could do that. Maybe the Hulk would have a chance of imitating that man, but he wasn't that sure either. And he and Banner had tested the big guy's strength extensively. Romanoff, what the hell is that? He asked, without being able to look away as he saw the man hold the tower as the helicopter took off. She didn't answer immediately, probably as shocked as he was. That is the man I'm looking for, she answered finally. Stark felt his insides turn to ice for a moment. A new threat? Is he? Not a threat. Not yet, at least. And hopefully not ever. But he is an unknown. While she was talking, the man was still holding the oil rig. The helicopter managed to get away, but he was left there and Tony could see the steel beam he was standing on beginning to bend. In a matter of seconds, the beam gave out and the whole thing came crashing down on top of the man. A huge explosion following. The footage stopped. That was when Stark's brain finally caught up with what Natasha had said. Is? He asked, his eyes still glued to the screen, even without anything there anymore. Are you saying this guy survived this? Do you know this for certain? If he sounded alarmed, it was because he was. Very alarmed. The level of strength to hold that oil rig was off the charts, and that by itself was shocking. Surviving the whole thing crashing on his head soon before everything exploded. Well, he could honestly say even with his Mark 44, aka the Hulkbuster, he wouldn't be able to deal with that kind of damage, and he and Banner were co-developing that thing to be able to stop a Hulk rampage. He survived, Natasha said. I was tasked to find him by Fury, to assess if he is a threat. I think he isn't, but I have to find him to confirm it. Yes, confirming is good, Tony agreed, playing the footage again. Do you know where to start? She was in silence for a few seconds, thinking. The boats around the oil rig. Can you zoom in on them? She asked. He typed fast. doing there, she asked. What are you thinking? He questioned. Well, he got there somehow. He wasn't wearing a uniform, so he didn't work at the rig. And he probably didn't swim there, or at least not all the way, so he was on one of the boats. Got it. Learn which one, and you can question the crew. He finished, talking fast. That's the plan. Well, that is the plan. Good plan, let's do it. Jessica groaned, not daring to open her eyes. God damn it, why all the noise? Couldn't someone sleep peacefully anymore? Do you absolutely have to make a ruckus? She asked, eyes still closed. Well, given that you're sleeping in my apartment, that it's time to go to work, and that I'm being kind enough to make eggs for you, I would think so, Clark answered happily. She groaned again, louder. And what exactly are you doing sleeping on my couch? He asked, the sound of a frying pan and eggs loud. You said I could stay. I told you that I wouldn't kick you out, not to sleep on my couch. That wasn't planned, she grumbled, sitting down. I just closed my eyes, and the next thing I know you're waking me up now. How long have you been up? A couple of hours. Got out, bought some things, including these eggs, and broke into your apartment for a chance to borrow the frying pan. She stared at him. You broke into my apartment? He looked at her and smirked. You're not the only one who knows how to do that, you know. He turned back and started to serve the eggs into plates. On the plates. By the way, there is a reason I woke you up. Someone's knocking at your door. She groaned a third time, wanting to scratch her own eyes out. Are you sure it's the door and not the freaky neighbours upstairs doing their freaky sex? Clark looked at her again, a little red on the cheeks. I'm pretty sure the people upstairs are siblings, he said slowly. And the noise is not sex. At least I really hope not. How the fuck do you know that? Have you been spying on the neighbours with your x-ray vision? No, I just have really good hearing. Wow, so you have super hearing now, is that it? I do, actually. Now, do you want me to prove it by repeating the things you whispered in your sleep, or do you want to go see who's at your door? She stopped in her tracks and looked at him for a second. You're bluffing, I don't talk in my sleep, she challenged. Are you sure? Are you really going to bet on that? Jessica stared at her for a few more seconds and got up, going to the door. Not because she believed him, she told herself, but because she wanted to know who was at her door. With quick steps, she opened the door, ready to send whoever was knocking away running, only to freeze when she saw the person knocking was her own sister, Patricia Trish Walker. Trish, she whispered, too shocked to say anything else. The woman knocking at her door turned to her. With blonde hair, pale complexion, and shining green eyes, Trish Walker looked like a sunny version of Jessica Jones. Even if they didn't share any blood. That small fact, however, did not affect how close they were. For all intents and purposes, Jessica and Trish were sisters. And that made the fact that Jessica was actively avoiding Trish all the more hurtful. Trish looked briefly to the apartment she had been knocking, and then back to Jess. Was I knocking at the wrong place? She asked, getting away from the door. No, that's my place. I just stayed here tonight, Jessica answered hesitantly. She frowned, not understanding, but didn't ask for an explanation. In fact, she didn't move at all. Now that Jessica was in front of her, she seemed to have lost the ability to do so. Invite her in, Clark's voice said from behind her. The voice seemed to wake them from the trance they were in, and Jessica called Trish, entering back into the apartment. With hesitant steps, she followed her inside, still in silence. Trish looked around, taking in the details, until her eyes spotted Clark. He smiled and approached. Hi, I'm Clark Kent, but please call me Clark. Are you a friend of Jessica? He asked, extending his hand. She took it and shook it, looking at Jessica for a moment. I am Patricia Walker. You can call me Trish. I'm her sister. He was clearly surprised, looking at Jessica as well. I didn't know you had a sister. And then he looked at Trish again. Wait, did you say Trish Walker? Wait, from Trish Talk? Patsy? I'm a fan. You are? Jessica couldn't resist asking. Well, from Trish Talk, yes. Not so much from Patsy. Sorry. Trish smiled a little bit at his enthusiasm. It's always nice to meet a fan. She looked between the two of them, losing the smile. Especially when he's dating my sister. His eyebrows shot up at the exact same time Jessica choked on her own saliva. Oh, no, we're not, he started. Definitely not dating, she finished. Trish held her look, not backing down. Then, explain this! She exploded, suddenly gesturing around, obviously tired of not understanding what was happening. She turned to Jessica. Please, explain to me why the sister I don't see in months is getting out of her neighbour's apartment after clearly spending the night. Explain to me why you don't answer my calls and why I had to come here all the way to your apartment, not for the first time, to finally see you. She was fuming, looking directly at Jessica, and Jessica couldn't exactly deny she was right to be angry. Well, I can see you two need to talk, Clark said quickly. I gotta go get my payment, so please make yourselves comfortable. Eat some egg, drink some coffee. He finished eating his own egg extremely quickly and grabbed his jacket. Just lock the door when you leave, Jess. I really can't afford being robbed right now. Trish, it was a pleasure. And with this, the fastest she had ever seen him move without becoming a blur in the air, Clark left. She turned to Jess, who was still looking at her. Okay, I owe you some explanations, Jessica finally said. You think? Trish retorted. Do you have any idea how worried I was? After all that crap you went through, after finally getting out from Kilgrave's control, you just disappeared. No calls, no visits, nothing. Why? Why would you be so irresponsible? Because I was embarrassed, Jessica yelled, reaching her limit. Because I was humiliated. Trish looked surprised at her. Her expression softened. Jess, we both know that wasn't your fault. Yes, I know it wasn't my fault. I know I was being controlled. I know that there was nothing I could have done to stop him from doing the things he did to others and myself, she interrupted. Doesn't mean it didn't feel like it was. She breathed and looked down, incapable of staring at her sister. I just couldn't face you, she admitted, her face low. Not after that. I felt like no matter how much I tried to get clean, the dirt just wouldn't come off. Trish approached slowly, tentatively, and when Jessica didn't move away, she embraced her. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. Hesitantly, Jessica raised her arms and embraced her too. Me too. After a few minutes, neither of them moved, content in staying in each other's arms. Then they let their arms fall. Are you okay now? Trish asked. I mean, I know you're not okay, but are you getting better? Jessica's first answer would be a default, hell no. But she stopped and thought a little bit. She wasn't okay, no doubt about that. But getting better? Yeah, since yesterday she could honestly say she did feel better. She nodded. I'm getting better. Trish gestured to the apartment around them. Does Clark have anything to do with this? She inquired, raising her eyebrows a little bit. Jessica didn't answer. Instead, she picked up the New York Bulletin from the couch and gave it to Trish. She nodded, confused, until she saw Clark's name. He wrote this? I heard about that. Something about a guy making mutants, right? Yes, and yes. And I was there with him, yesterday. Fighting against armed men to help those people, she quickly explained. Trish did a double take, her jaw dropping. You were? Are you doing this thing again? Being the hero? Jessica chuckled. If you had asked me a few days ago, I would have said, fuck no. But apparently now I am. And then she told Trish what happened, from seeing Clark running over a car, to finally fighting the armed henchman and that strong bitch. And more than just facts. She told Trish what it meant to her, which frankly surprised the hell out of Jessica. Since she was never one to share, she probably hadn't woken up completely yet. That had to be it. Are you going to do this again? You going to help people again? Trish asked after the story was told. I don't know. Maybe I'll evaluate it case by case. Well, at least you have someone as strong as you now, right? He can have your back, right? He's safer. It's safer. Slightly stronger. Just a tiny bit. I shouldn't even have told you that. Oh, come on. What am I going to do? Tell the police? You know you can trust me. I know that, she admitted begrudgingly. But he doesn't. And I don't know yet. We'll see how it goes. There were a few moments of comfortable silence when Jessica took the chance to eat her cold, scrambled eggs. Okay, quick question, Trish said abruptly. I know you helped Clark. I know you saved a lot of people together, but how does that amount to you sleeping here and eating his breakfast? And why the hell did he just leave us here instead of kicking us out to go to your apartment? Is there something going on? Jessica stopped her egg-filled fork mid-air. No, I already told you, he's just a friend. A really hot one, Trish interjected, smirking. He's 21, you cougar. I'm just saying, I wouldn't mind. He's legal. Oh, God. Jessica groaned, beginning to laugh. Her laugh seemed to break the dam, and Trish also began to laugh uncontrollably. Jessica didn't know what the heck she would do in the future. If she would keep the being a hero or not thing going. If she was going to try and put her life together and move on. But at that moment, laughing alongside her sister, talking about everyday crap, she didn't particularly care. At that moment, she was happy. Clark looked at the envelope in his hands for what seemed like the 1000th time. And for the 1000th time, he smiled. His first paycheck. He really did it. It wasn't just until he got into the New York Bulletin Building and actually received a paycheck from Mr. Ellison himself that the idea of being paid for his first published story really sank in. They still hadn't hired him. There was that, but he was off to a great start. Not every journalist in the world could brag about getting the front page story at the very first time you try it. What to do now? He was a little hesitant about going back home. Jessica and her famous sister, who would have thought, really needed to talk about some things apparently. If he went back right now, he had a chance of interrupting them, and he really didn't want to get in the middle of a crossfire if a fight started. Sure, that meant he basically kicked himself out of his own apartment, but it was for a good cause. He hoped. Jessica had helped him. He didn't mind helping her, even if it was a little bit inconvenient. So that meant he needed to find something to do for the next couple of hours. If he had friends in the city, that would be a perfect time to go bother them. Unfortunately, Jessica was his only friend so far, and she was the whole reason he couldn't go home yet. Acquaintances then? Luke seemed like a pretty nice guy, but the bar wasn't open. Malcolm, his other neighbour, obviously lived in the same building, so that wasn't an option. Susan Harris, the beautiful real estate agent who gave him her number, was probably working right now, and the only other people he knew were the people he'd saved from that fire. He stopped for a second. Why not? The woman he rescued had promised to stop doing drugs and had signed her name to start on a rehab program. Right there at Metro General Hospital. It wouldn't hurt to see if she was doing okay. It wasn't like she was going to remember him. He didn't even need to talk to her, just see how she was. So, making a decision, he got in the bus. It wasn't long until he got out and walked to the hostel. He didn't have the slightest idea where he was supposed to go once he walked in, so he just kept walking, hoping he would find someone who knew along the way. That meant he soon was in the ER, surrounded by sick and injured. His eyes spotted a familiar nurse. "Hey, could you—" "Not now, I'm busy," the nurse said, not even looking at the clock while she began to treat one of the patients. He couldn't exactly argue. The place was full and there was a very small number of nurses and doctors around, in comparison with the number of injured people. Instead of distracting her, Clark just watched as she tried to stitch the arm of the man, who was apparently very drunk. Each time she approached, the guy moved his arm. Not because he was afraid of the needle, but because he was swaying non-stop. Seeing the nurse starting to get more and more frustrated, Clark held the man in place. "Thanks," she said, beginning her work. While stitching the guy, she took a look at Clark. "You were the guy who brought in those junkies who almost got themselves burned to death." "Good memory," he complimented. "I'm Clark." "Claire," she introduced herself. "So, did you bring any more people today? Because I really don't need more patients right now," she smiled. And Clark smiled back. "No, not today." "Did something happen, or is it usually this full?" "A car accident nearby, I think. But it's not that much fuller than usual. I would know, I've been here since yesterday." "Why? You're the only nurse in this hospital?" Clark joked. "Sometimes I feel like I'm the only one in the city," she chuckled. With her blue uniform covered in blood spots, her tired face and messy hair, Clark could believe that. That was the look of someone who had been working non-stop for a while, and while some people would find that her messy appearance needed to be fixed, even like that, Clark thought, Claire was still a beautiful woman. Dark hair and skin, a striking face. Given that she was working the whole day and she was covered in blood, Clark could just imagine she would be a real beauty after a shower and a good night's rest. "I actually wanted to ask about the people I brought in here that day," Clark began. "You were the one who suggested that rehab program. I was just wondering, seeing how they're doing." "Well, I actually have no idea," Claire answered bluntly. Clark laughed. "I imagined. But if you could give me the directions, I'll go see for myself." She finished stitching the man and took a step back. "If you wait until I check these last..." She looked back and counted. "2 patients. I can take you there. It shouldn't take long." He smiled again. "No problem." Changing her gloves, Claire walked with quick steps to the next patient, Clark following her close. It was a boy reaching his teenage years, cradling his arm with a tear streak down his face. "Now, how did this happen?" Claire asked, firmly but gently touching the boy's arms. "Football," he sobbed. "Fell down in the game." Claire nodded, still examining him. Unknown to her, Clark was also examining the arm, looking at it with his X-ray vision. "It might be broken," she said. "I'll take you to the X-ray room." "It's not broken," Clark interjected. Claire and the boy looked at him. "Just dislocated." "How could you possibly know that?" It's a strong guess," he answered lamely. "Well, while I normally take into consideration any strong guesses of an untrained man in the ER when I'm examining someone, today I'll take the long way and send him to do a proper examination," Claire deadpanned, calling someone to take the boy to the X-ray room and already moving to the next patient. This time it was a woman. clearly agitated, but also very pale and weak. "Hi, I'm Claire. What seems to be the problem today?" "You ain't a doctor," the woman sneered. Claire's nice smile strained, but it stayed while it was there. "No, ma'am, I'm not. But I'll direct you to a proper doctor as soon as I know what's wrong with you." The woman wasn't happy, but whatever she was going to say was stopped by a bout of nausea. Clark and Claire took a step back, but the woman managed to hold down the need to puke. "Nausea," she managed to say, "and I'm so tired. All the time. I'm also—" "Twins!" Clark exclaimed, before he could stop himself. Both women turned to face him. "What did you just say to me, young man?" "I mean, you are," he stammered, realizing his mistake. "You might be pregnant, ma'am," Claire said, stepping in. The woman did not look happy. A photo of her expression could probably be found on a dictionary under the opposite of happy. "My husband and I can't have any children," she said. "Ho! That's not good at all," Clark brilliantly responded, his enthusiasm dying. Claire was momentarily speechless. Before this could turn into a huge fight, she just called a passing doctor, exchanging a few words with him, and he took the woman with him for further examination. "Okay, what the hell was that?" she demanded, holding Clark's arm. "What's with all the medical diagnoses? Are you a doctor in disguise?" No, what? No, of course not. What is it then? And don't you dare try and say to me it was a strong guess." Clark opened his mouth to give her any excuse, but nothing came out. He looked at her again and tried once more. I can do things other people can't," he finished, feeling incredibly stupid. She raised her eyebrows. "Yeah, like what, magic?" Bullshit," she interrupted, before he could say anything. "I should take you to the psych ward." "What if I could prove it?" Clark asked, not really sure why he was even insisting on this. Jessica may be a bad influence on him. She nodded, still watching him. "Okay, Houdini, you know what? Come with me." Turning, she left the ER and Clark followed behind her. He had no idea what he was getting into, and he was slowly beginning to think that this was a bad idea. Well, actually, he already knew it was a bad idea, and yet somehow he wasn't concerned about that. That by itself was weird. Maybe using his powers on a daily basis was making him more comfortable with the idea of being seen different. Maybe his brief time with someone as gifted as him made him feel more normal. Clark really didn't know. Nevertheless, he wasn't afraid of the woman in front of him finding out, and he had something else than the average person. His instincts did not see her as a threat. That had to count for something. Claire took him up 3 floors, to the ICU, directly to a patient room. She opened the door and entered. The patient was sleeping, either naturally or because he was sedated. He was hooked to an IV, and the monitor was beeping slowly. "Okay," Claire said, looking at Clark, "if you can really do things other people can't, tell me what's wrong with this guy." Clark looked at her for a second before turning and walking to the patient. "What happened?" he asked. "He passed out in his house 3 days ago. His neighbours called an ambulance. He had seizures and strong headaches," Claire explained. "After getting here, he had strong abdominal pains and his heart stopped twice. And you have no idea what's causing this." Claire gave a mirthless laugh. "If I did, I wouldn't be here with you," she shrugged. "But the guy's dying. He doesn't have anything to lose, and the only thing I have to lose is my time. You either really can do things other people can't, in which case you can save him, or you can't, in which case I just proved you're a liar and I'm going to kick you out of the hospital." Very pragmatic. She smiled. "I found that it's useless to debate belief. You either show me proof or you shut up. If you had told me you could fly, we would be on the roof right now and I would tell you to jump." Clark gave her a smile, but not for the reason she was thinking. "Alright, let's see what I can do." Saying this, Clark focused on his eyes. It was always an interesting experience to change the kind of vision he was using. Colours became different, heat and electromagnetic waves became visible, really small and faraway objects gained definition. The man's body gained a bluish tone when his eyes passed through the clothes and skin. His bones and muscles showed up. He could see every vein and artery, every involuntary movement of his organs and the blood flowing. Unconsciously, his hearing also became enhanced when he concentrated. From the muscles twitching to the blood pumping. There was only one thing in his whole body he couldn't see. A small black dot on his right femur. Was he ever shot? Clark asked suddenly. In the right leg, maybe? Claire, who was observing him with attention, waiting for him to do something, was shocked into motion. "I think so," she said, reaching for his medical history. She quickly read it. "Yeah, 6 years ago he was mugged, resisted and was shot in his right leg." She looked at him. "How the hell did you know that?" Clark smiled. It's either a strong guess or I really can do things other people can't, he answered cheekily. Claire gave him a serious look. Well, it doesn't matter anyway because it's clearly not related to anything, she said. On the contrary, it's the cause of everything that's happening to him, Clark countered. Whoever took the bullet out didn't do a good job. They left a piece inside the bone. The lead from the bullet is leaking out. This is lead poisoning. Claire kept looking at his face, each word he said making her more surprised. She read the file again, looked at the patient again, checking and rechecking his symptoms and comparing them to Clark's diagnostic. Son of a bitch, she whispered, looking at Clark with a whole other expression. How? You know what, it doesn't matter. I think you might just save this man's life. And with that she ran out, calling a doctor to explain the situation. Clark couldn't help but be a little bothered by the attention he had just brought on himself. But he did save a life. His little discomfort was a small price to pay for that. Soon after, Claire was back, with a doctor accompanying her. The doctor, clad in his white coat, didn't even look at Clark. He just got in, approached the patient, read his file, and stared at the gunshot scar on his leg. He then turned and looked at Clark with a very serious expression. How did you do this? He asked, rudely. More intelligent men than you couldn't figure it out. Clark, not exactly wanting to explain it, he could see through things, and a little bit offended by the doctor's tone, just answered, I'm a magician. He could hear Claire doing his best to hold back a laugh from behind them. The doctor, however, was anything but amused. He raised one single eyebrow and kept staring. There is no such thing as magic, he finally said, completely unamused, but clearly curious as to how Clark found this out. He then turned to Claire. Miss Temple, take this sorcerer out of the ICU. I'll go prep this patient for surgery. With this, without saying anything else, he left. Nice guy, said Clark sarcastically. That's Dr. Stephen Strange, Claire explained. He is a little bit, don't you dare, strange, Clark completed, grinning. She sighed, irritated. If I had a nickel for every time... No, I was going to say he's kind of an asshole. But he is brilliant at what he does. He agrees with the diagnostic. He's going to perform the surgery himself. Come on, Houdini. I guess I owe you one. I'll take you to the rehab clinic. Martha Kent held the phone between her ear and her shoulder, her hands busy with a basket full of freshly picked apples. With a lifetime of practice, she washed them and began to cut them, preparing them for her famous apple pie. All the while she listened to her son on the phone, telling her about his first published story. She smiled. Martha could just picture young Clark sitting at the table behind her, watching her baking his favourite pie, telling her about his day. Of course, back then, Clark's days didn't involve breaking into a mutant factory and causing the arrest of several high-up government people. They were still weird, she had to admit. But, like the day he got home all scared because he'd accidentally ripped a car door, or the day he also accidentally set part of the school gym on fire with his heat vision. Well, maybe more embarrassed than scared on the second one, since it was the day he discovered he had heat vision, at least in the beginning, could be triggered by the sight of the small scare to the cheerleaders. Mom, why are you laughing at me? Clark asked, no doubt hearing her trying to hold her laugh. Sorry, dear. I was just remembering the day you set the gym on fire because of those cheerleaders, she answered, no longer holding back the laugh. He sighed while she laughed. You'll never let me forget that, will you? He questioned, resigned. Not in a million years, dear. It is my duty as your mother to remember every single embarrassing thing about your life, so I can pass them on to your future wife, like you did with Lana. You know, she never really forgave me for finding out that my X-ray vision could be controlled to limit itself to only see through clothes right when I looked at her. It wasn't my fault. You ran away and left that poor girl alone, without a clue of what to do. I had to explain what happened. You didn't have to be specific. Martha laughed again, remembering her son's first girlfriend. Ah, what a nice girl she was. It was a pity that they preferred to remain friends. Nice, beautiful girls that could accept the fact Clark wasn't human and keep it a secret were rare to find. Okay, Mom, I gotta go. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Love you. Love you too, dear. Take care of yourself. She lowered the phone and got back to her pie, still smiling. Martha had a very positive outlook on life, but when Jonathan died, there were still times when she felt a little bit lonely. Clark, of course, had moved on with his life. She would never begrudge him for that. But nothing gave her quite as much happiness as when he called her, or better yet, took the time to fly to Smallville and see her in person. Still distracted, Martha was broken out of her old memories when the doorbell rang. Drying her hands, she left the kitchen and went to the door, opening it, and there was a very beautiful red-headed woman waiting for her on the porch. Martha Kent? My name is Natasha Romanoff. I'd like to talk to you about your son, Clark Kent. May I come in? Okay guys, it's been Fanfic Reading here. I want to thank you all for watching this Chapter 7 of Avengers of Steel. Now there's one thing I wanted to mention really quickly. Someone in the comments of last video caught my attention when they spoke about probably getting an animator for this to make it more picturesque, I suppose. And I thought animating is a little bit too much for what I had in mind, but I realised if any of you are like artists or have a drawing hobby or something like that, as you've noticed, what I use for this video, for these videos, are basically just still images of Google Images. So I was wondering if any of you want to draw like a very basic pictures, like black and white stick figures, stuff like that, of basic stuff like Clark in his apartment talking to Jess or stuff like that. You can send them to me and I'll put them in the video because it's better than Google Images, I can tell you that. But anyway, you don't have to, no hassle about that, I just thought I'd mention it. Alright then guys, it's been Fanfic Reader here. Next chapter we will be dealing with Clark having a very detailed conversation with Natasha Romanoff. But next week we're going to be doing chapter 3 of The Oncoming Storm. And I'll see you guys in the next chapter.